Chapter 22 of My Reminiscences by Rabindranath Tagore. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 22 Patriotism. From an outside point of view, many a foreign custom would appear to have gained entry into our family, but at its heart flames a national pride which has never flickered. The genuine regard which my father had for his country never forsook him through all the revolutionary vicissitudes of his life, and this in his descendants has taken shape as a strong patriotic feeling. Love of country was, however, by no means a characteristic of the times of which I am writing. Our educated men then kept at arm's length both the language and the thought of their native land. Nevertheless my elder brothers had always cultivated Bengali literature. When on one occasion some new connection by marriage wrote my father an English letter, it was promptly returned to the writer. The Hindu Mela was an annual fair which had been instituted with the assistance of our house. Babu Nabagopal Mitra was appointed its manager. This was perhaps the first attempt at a reverential realization of India as our motherland. My second brother's popular national anthem Bharata Jaya was composed then. The singing of songs glorifying the motherland, the recitation of poems of the love of country, the exhibition of indigenous arts and crafts, and the encouragement of national talent and skill were the features of this Mela. On the occasion of Lord Curzon's Delhi Darbar I wrote a prose paper. At the time of Lord Lytton's it was a poem. The British government of those days feared the Russians, it is true, but not the pen of a 14-year-old poet. So, though my poem lacked none of the fiery sentiments appropriate to my age, there was no signs of any consternation in the ranks of the authorities from the Commander in Chief down to the Commander of Police. Nor did any lachrymose letter in the Times predict a speedy downfall of the Empire for this apathy of its local guardians. I recited my poem under a tree at the Hindu Mela, and one of my hearers was Nabin Sen, the poet, reminded me of this after I had grown up. My fourth brother, Jyotirindra, was responsible for a political association of which old Raj Narayan Bose was the president. It held its sittings in the tumble down building in an obscure Calcutta lane. Its proceedings were enshrouded in mystery. This mystery was its only claim to be awe inspiring, for as a matter of fact there was nothing in our deliberations or doings of which government or people need have been afraid. The rest of our family had no idea where we were spending our afternoons. Our front door would be locked, the meeting room in darkness, the watchword a Vedic mantra, our talk in whispers. These alone provided us with enough of a thrill, and we wanted nothing more. Mere child as I was also a member. We surround ourselves with such an atmosphere of pure frenzy that we always seem to be soaring aloft on the wings of our enthusiasm. Of bashfulness, diffidence or fear we had none, our main object being to bask in the heat of our own fervour. Bravery may sometimes have its drawbacks, but it has always maintained a deep hold on the reverence of mankind. In the literature of all countries we find an unflagging endeavour to keep alive this reverence. So in whatever state a particular set of men in a particular locality may be, they cannot escape the constant impact of their stimulating shocks. We had to be content with responding to such shocks as best as we could by letting loose our imagination, coming together, talking tall and singing fervently. There can be no doubt that the closing up all outlets and barring all openings to a faculty so deep seated in the nature of man, and moreover so praised by him, creates an unnatural condition favourable to degenerate activity. It is not enough to keep open only the avenues to clerical employment in any comprehensive scheme of imperial government. If no road be left for adventurous daring, the soul of man will pine for deliverance, and secret passages will be sought, of which the pathways are tortuous and the end unthinkable. I firmly believe that if in those days government had paraded a frightful bond of suspicion, then the comedy which the youthful members of this association had been at might have turned into grim tragedy. The play, however, is over, not a brick of Fort William is any the worse, and we are now smiling at its memory. My brother, Jyotirindra, began to busy himself with a national costume for all India, and submitted various designs to the association. The dhoti was not deemed businesslike, trousers were too foreign. So he hit upon a compromise which considerably detracted from the dhoti while failing to improve the trousers. This is to say, the trousers were decorated with the addition of a false dhoti fold in the front and behind, the fearsome thing that resulted from combining a turban with a sola tope. Our most enthusiastic member would not have had the temerity to call ornamental. No person of ordinary courage would have dared it, but my brother unflinchingly wore the complete suit in broad daylight, passing through the house of an afternoon to the carriage waiting outside, indifferent alike to the stare of relation or friend, doorkeeper or coachman. There may be many a brave Indian ready to die for his country, but there are but few, I am sure, who even for the good of the nation would face the public streets in such pan Indian garb. Every Sunday my brother would get up a Shikar party. Many of those who joined in it, uninvited, we did not even know. There was a carpenter, a smith, and others from all ranks of society. Bloodshed was the only thing lacking in the Shikar. At least I cannot recall any. In other appendages were so abundant and satisfying that we felt the absence of dead or wounded game to be a trifling circumstance of no account. As we were out from early morning, my sister in law furnished us with a plentiful supply of luchis, with appropriate accompaniments, and as these did not depend on the fortunes of our chase, we never had to return empty. The neighbourhood of Maniktola is not wanting in villa gardens. We would turn into any of these at the end, and high and low born alike, seated on the bathing platform of our tank, would fling ourselves on the luchis in the right good earnest, all that was left of them being the vessels they were brought in. Brajababu was one of the enthusiastic of these bloodthirstless shikaris. He was the superintendent of the Metropolitan Institution and had also been our private tutor for a time. One day he had a happy idea of accosting the Mali, gardener, of a villa garden into which we had thus trespassed with, "Hallo, has uncle been there lately?" The Mali lost no time in saluting him respectfully before he replied, "No sir, the master hasn't been lately." "All right, get us some green coconuts of the trees." We had a fine drink after our luchis that day. A Zamindar in a small way was among our party. He owned a villa on the river side. One day we had a picnic there together in defiance of caste rules. In the afternoon there was a tremendous storm. We stood on the riverside stairs leading into the water and shouted out songs to its accompaniment. I cannot truthfully assert that all the 7 notes of the scale could properly be distinguished in Rajnarayan Babu's singing. Nevertheless he sent forth his voice and, as in the old Sanskrit words, the text is drowned by the notes. So in Rajnarayan Babu's musical efforts the vigorous play of his limbs and features overwhelmed his feebler vocal performance. His head swung from side to side, marking time, while the storm played havoc with his flowing beard. It was late in the night when we turned homewards in a hackney carriage. By that time the storm clouds had dispersed and the stars twinkled forth. The darkness had become intense, the atmosphere silent, the village roads deserted, and the thickets on either side filled with fireflies like a carnival of sparks scattered in some noiseless revelry. One of the objects of our association was to encourage the manufacture of lucifer matches and similar small industries. For this purpose each member had to contribute a tenth of his income. Matches had to be made, but matchwood was difficult to get. For though we all know with that fiery energy a bundle of Kangras, [Footnote: The dried and stripped centre vein of a coconut leaf lies a long tapering stick of average thickness of a matchstick, and a bundle of these goes to make common Bengal household broom, which in the hands of a housewife is popularly supposed to be useful in keeping the whole household in order from the husband downwards. Its effect on a bare back is here alluded to.] can be wielded in capable hands. The thing that burns at its touch is not a lamp wick. After many experiments we succeeded in making a box full of matches. The patriotic enthusiasm which was thus evidenced did not constitute their only value, for the money that was spent in their making might have served to light the family hearth for the space of a year. Another little defect was, that these matches could not be got to burn unless there was light handy to touch them up with. If they could only have inherited some patriotic flame of which they were born, they might have been marketable even to day. News came to us that some young student was trying to make a power loom. Off we went to see it. None of us had the knowledge with which to test its practical usefulness, but in our capacity for believing and hoping we were inferior to none. The poor fellow had got into a bit of debt over the cost of his machine, which we repaid for him. Then one day we found Braja Babu coming home to our house with a flimsy country towel tied round his head. "Made in our loom!" he shouted as his hands uplifted he executed a war dance. The outside of Braja Babu's head had then already begun to ripen into grey. At last some worldly wise people came and joined our society, made us taste of the fruit of knowledge, and broke up our little paradise. When I first knew Rajnarayan Babu, I was not old enough to appreciate his many sidedness. In him were combined many opposites. In spite of his hoary hair and beard, he was as young as the youngest of us, his venerable exterior serving only as a white mantle for keeping his youth perpetually fresh. Even his extensive learning had not been able to do him any damage, for it left him absolutely simple. To the end of his life the incessant flow of his hearty laughter suffered no check, neither from the gravity of age, nor ill health, nor domestic affliction, nor profundity of thought, nor variety of knowledge, all of which had been his in ample measure. He had been a favourite pupil of Richardson, and had brought up in an atmosphere of English learning. Nevertheless he flung aside all obstacles due to his early habit, and gave himself up lovingly and devotedly to Bengali literature. Though the meekest of men, he was full of fire which flamed its fiercest in its patriotism, as though to burn to ashes the shortcomings and destitutions of his country. The memory of this smile sweetened, forever illumined, lifelong youthful saint is one that is worth cherishing by our countrymen. End of chapter 22. Read by Lambda.